Yeah, this rhetoric is starting to ramp up, isn't it? It's certainly gone from being full-throated, ironclad support for Israel to more and more doubt creeping in the eyes of the American government. Of course, they will say that they still have full support for Israel's defense, but they are starting to draw that line at providing weapons for Israel to go ahead with this offensive in Rafah. Antony Blinken on the Sunday shows really pushing back and giving some of the sharpest criticism we've heard from a US official towards the Israeli government, saying that the Israeli tactics that they've been using in Gaza led to a, quote, horrible loss of innocent civilians. He's also said that the tactics could fail to root out Hamas, which is ultimately the goal of Israel and also of the United States. And he also warned about the potential insurgency that would then be left behind and a power vacuum. Now, this has been something that we have heard before from Blinken and also from Joe Biden himself. Remember, he had that phone call with Netanyahu where he said, don't make the same mistakes that we did after 9/11, where we went into Afghanistan, and don't be too hot-headed. That was a warning that he's given to Netanyahu many times. Now, Blinken said that any operation that went ahead in Rafah might show some initial success, but also said that it risks terrible harm to the population without solving the issue of ridding the enclave of Hamas. The other thing that Blinken really is pointing out again is that there is a big difference between what the Israelis see for the future of Gaza and what the Americans see. The Americans, we know, have been working with regional partners, Arab nations, to try to come together and provide some kind of plan for the governance, the structure and the rebuilding, more importantly, of Gaza. And Antony Blinken said, we haven't seen that come from Israel. We need to see that too. Now, obviously, Netanyahu has had history of being dubious about the two-state solution. He said that anything that would enable a power structure within Gaza or any kind of authoritarian force, such as a police force or a military, would be a no-go for him. So there are some big differences that remain here between the US and Israel on these points.
And it naturally gets the US thinking about those weapons deliveries, also following on from that State Department report, which showed inconsistencies with how Israel has used US weapons. What's the fallout been from that if we link it now to these comments by Antony Blinken?
Yeah, this was a bit of a double whammy on Friday. Obviously, over the course of the last week, we heard that the US had paused this weapons shipment to Israel for worries that those weapons would be used in a Rafah operation. And then, of course, we had the National Security Memorandum, which shows that the Israelis may have used US weapons to violate international laws and US laws, but that basically was too difficult to tell because of the conditions of war. That has angered some people, even on Joe Biden's side of the aisle. The more progressive Democrats in Congress have said that the report was a bit wishy-washy, and one person went further. Bernie Sanders, one of the most famous Democrats in the Senate, said that anybody who is observing this conflict can see that Israel has broken international law, and said that they needed to stop aid to Israel and not give them another nickel. When you counterbalance that with the other side of the aisle, people like Lindsey Graham on the Republican side saying that the stopping of the shipment to the Israelis was, quote, the worst decision in the history of US-Israeli relationships. So Joe Biden is really stuck between a rock and a hard place, and that is also playing out nationally with the electorate as well. The issue of Hamas and the Israel conflict with Hamas is really starting to weigh heavy on the population, and now we are less than 6 months away from the election. Joe Biden needs to win some crucial groups of people, including the youth vote and also the Arab and Palestinian vote in key states like Michigan, where he won by just a couple of percentage points, and they make up at least 5% of the population in that state.
Fraser, thanks so much for that full roundup. Of course, following those comments by Antony Blinken and looking at those possibly fractured relationships between the Biden administration and Israel.